The New York Islanders season is over. The players have made their parting comments and cleaned out their lockers, but we still don't know the status of Lou Lamoriello and Patrick Roy, and that's what's going to determine the future of this franchise. We've got all that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
You're Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Monday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts so you get new episodes as soon as they drop. I'm Gil Martin. I've been covering the New York Islanders for almost 2 decades, and I wrote the book Ice Wars on the history of the Islanders' rivalry with the Rangers from 1972 till the modern era. So glad you could join us today to talk a little Islanders hockey. Hope everybody enjoyed their Easter or their Passover, and here we are. Playoffs are underway, and the off season for the Islanders is here, and it's going to be a very eventful offseason. And that's what we're going to discuss today and really for the foreseeable future. We do not know the futures of Lou Lamoriello and Patrick Roy. Those two things are related. We will talk about what some of the players said as they departed, and we'll take an early look at some potential off-season moves and updates on players' health and other things. So a lot to cover, even though there are no games going on for the Islanders, at least right now. The key to the future is what Scott Malkin, the primary owner of the New York Islanders, is going to decide vis-a-vis Lou Lamoriello and Patrick Roy. And those two are related. Let's be clear about that. I think if Lou Lamoriello continues to be the GM, there's very little doubt in my mind that Patrick Roy will continue as the head coach. If Lou Lamoriello is replaced or retires, then obviously whoever gets hired as the new GM may want to bring in their own coach, or I would not rule 100% out, although I don't think it's likely, but I wouldn't rule out the possibility of Patrick Roy taking over as the general manager. He did run a juniors team, obviously, and owned a juniors team and coached it for many years. So that possibility is not off the table, but again, I don't necessarily think it's the most likely outcome. And neither Lou Lamoriello nor Patrick Roy addressed the media at Getaway Day on Saturday. Can't say that's a shock. Lou Lamoriello in the past has waited a while before addressing the media. Again, that's just Lou being Lou, and while I would certainly prefer for him to speak, in this instance, the silence may mean more than it has in the past. And while I certainly respect what Lou Lamoriello has accomplished over the course of his career, with the Devils especially, with the Maple Leafs, and with the Islanders, and let's be clear, he made some important moves with the Islanders early in his tenure that led to the greatest success the franchise has had since the dynasty days. Hiring Barry Trotz, definitely one of those key moves. And, adjusting after John Tavares left, the Islanders went to back-to-back conference finals in 2020 and 2021, in part because of some of the things that Lou Lamoriello did. Thank you for that. But over the last 4 seasons, and everydayers will know this, over the last 4 seasons, the Islanders have missed the playoffs twice and been eliminated in the first round of the playoffs twice. They have won a grand total in those 4 seasons of 3 playoff games, 0 playoff rounds. And this is a roster that is aging. Many of the key players are on the wrong side of 30. And unfortunately, Lou Lamoriello has not changed things like he should have done under the circumstances, with the core getting older and the team remaining stuck in the muddy middle. This Islanders team is not good enough to be considered a cup contender. Even if you extend the definition of a Stanley Cup contender to being one of the top 10 teams in the league, and that may be generous because probably there's maybe 6, maybe 7 teams that you would consider legitimate Stanley Cup contenders. But even if you go top 10, the Islanders, since Lou Lamoriello took over as GM, have never been, during the regular season, a top 10 team in this league. Not even close. And they haven't been bad enough to get a lottery pick. This year, they are the 10th worst team in the NHL, so they have about a 3.5% chance, and every day as we discussed this on Friday's show, but they have about a 3.5% chance of getting the first overall pick in the draft. The muddy middle is the toughest place for a franchise to be in, and the fact that at the trade deadline, Lou Lamoriello attempted to re-sign both Brock Nelson and Kyle Palmieri is extremely disappointing given where this franchise is at right now. The Islanders AHL affiliate just set a record for home futility, winning a grand total of 4 games out of 36 home games. They had the worst record by a lot in the AHL. And the fact that the AHL affiliate did not have players that Lou Lamoriello trusted to bring up and play for this team when injuries really struck the defense core, and he had to bring in guys like Tony DeAngelo and Boqvist and Perunovic, and those guys played well. And I give Lou credit for finding them and signing them and putting a Band-Aid on some of these problems. But at some point, you have to realize the issue is a lack of organizational depth. And when injuries hit and things went awry, there wasn't anybody who the Islanders trusted to get the job done in the organization. Yeah, Isaiah George came up, played really well for about a dozen games, and then sort of hit the rookie wall. Grant Hutton and Dennis Chalowski were called up from Bridgeport, but it became very quickly apparent that they were not trusted. And at forward, when injuries hit, they didn't have anybody who they really trusted. And, you look over the stats, Oliver Wahlstrom left. Matt Martin was an afterthought after January until Anthony Duclair was gone. Julien Gauthier was called up, played 1 game. Liam Foudy was called up, played 2 games. This team did not have young, talented players that are NHL ready. Now, the good news is that 2 to 3 years from now, there are some players who might be able to help this team improve. You've got your Danny Nelson, maybe at or near the top of that list. You still have Isaiah George. You have Callie Odelius. There are a number of players out there who could do that. But Cole Yzerman is really the only one who would be considered a top 6 guy in the short run. And he's still at least a couple of years away from joining the Islanders. Now, you do have another player that the Islanders acquired in a trade at the end of the season in Adam Beckman, who might be able to help. But again, overall, the Islanders are just lacking in prospects. And it's a big problem for the New York Islanders that, realistically, maybe, just maybe, Callum Ritchie is able to come in and play next year in a middle six role, but there just aren't a lot of players out there to help this team get out of the muddy middle. And so the hard question that everybody has to ask, if I'm Scott Malkin, is this: the team is in a rut. They have been stuck in the muddy middle for the last 4 years. Lou Lamoriello, even now, didn't want to trade Brock Nelson and didn't trade Kyle Palmieri on expiring contracts at the deadline. He got a good return for Nelson, but Nelson kind of forced his hand and said, you know what? I'm testing the free agent market in July. If Lou Lamoriello is not willing to let go of some of his guys, and I'll put that in air quotes, and not willing to retool this team, and I'm using the Capitals from last year as the role model, then it is past time for Scott Malkin to say, Lou, I respect you. I respect everything you've done for this team, and even more so, what you've accomplished over the course of your career as an NHL general manager. But it's time for you to become a special advisor or to retire. And if you don't, I am going to replace you anyway. So I am all for giving Lou the chance to exit gracefully. I am all for pushing him upstairs to be the special advisor to the general manager or president in charge of hockey operations, making that more of an advisory position than an actual day-to-day involved in all the transactions of the team position. But realistically, and I don't see Lou Lamoriello being willing to make the changes that are needed, it is time for this team to move on and begin a new direction, because 2021 Game 7 of the conference finals was the high water mark of this core of players. And since then, they've gotten older. They have not been as good, and nothing seems to be changing to acknowledge that, you know what? When you got a bunch of guys who were in their 30s and slowing down, even though some of them had good seasons, it's always better to move on from a guy a year too soon than a year too late. And it's time for the Islanders to make some changes. We'll see if they do. And I think the next week will be very telling. We've got a lot more to discuss on today's show. A lot of players did speak to the media. We'll talk about a few who did not. But we'll talk about what they said and what it means, all that and more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. The Stanley Cup playoffs are here, and if you've never been to a live NHL playoff game, it's unlike anything else. The intensity, the speed, the energy in the building, it's next level. And thanks to Game Time, getting in the door is easier and more affordable than ever. Game Time is the fastest way to grab playoff tickets, even for those must-see matchups. Prices actually drop as puck drop gets closer, and with last-minute deals, you could save up to 60%. Save up to 60% off by buying last minute for sports, concerts, theater, comedy, etc. They have all-in pricing, and that shows the total cost up front, no surprise fee at checkout. And one of my favorite features on Game Time is the panoramic view from your seat, so you know exactly what to expect before you purchase the tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. So Saturday, the Islanders cleared out their lockers. It was getaway day on the island. And, some guys had some interesting things to say. And yet, I think a lot of it was kind of predictable. Anders Lee, the captain, I think may have been maybe the most obvious. You go to the consistency, Lee said. I think we lacked that throughout the year. I think we had moments where we put good games together and didn't get results. We had moments where we didn't close out games. You can pinpoint a few, but start with those. You start playing consistent hockey over and over again each night, the results will come. We did our best to get to that, but we didn't get to it nearly enough. And I think the question that you naturally have to follow that up with is why. And yeah, injuries didn't help, but I think at the end of the day, the issue is that this team isn't fast enough. It isn't skilled enough. They don't have enough goal scorers or point getters. And, in order to win consistently, this team would need to be almost perfect. They would need to have, that great day that, play almost to their capacity. And, they did it at times. You had the 7-game winning streak, but, there were a lot of other times where it just didn't go quite as well. And you need more talent on this team and more depth on this team. Casey Cizikas, it's having that confidence in ourselves. I think it's learning and knowing that we can close out games when we need to, not giving up late goals or giving up leads and things like that. Having that confidence in ourselves and in our group that we can get the job done, put teams away when we need to. That's something we need to learn how to do. Yeah, I guess that is true, but I think it comes back down to the same issue of depth and talent and speed and skill. Kyle Palmieri, I feel like coming out of camp, we felt ready for the season. There was some stuff we had to adjust on the fly when Patrick Waugh, came in last year. We had more time to meet and play around with things in preseason games and stuff like that. So I think everyone felt a little more comfortable. But as far as adjustments, there's things we probably have to do to become a better team and a more complete team. And I think that is definitely true. But there's even, more to it, realistically, than that. Now, a couple of other guys did not address the media, and I did want to mention them. Pierre Engvall was not there to address the media. Don't read anything into that. He was away. His wife is having a child, so the two of them, congratulations to the Engvalls, and good reason why Pierre Engvall did not address the media. His future, though, on the island remains kind of up in the air. Did his strong finish in the last, let's say 10 or 12 games, take out the last 4 or 5 games because he kind of slowed down and came off of his better play. But his 10 to 12 game stretch toward the end of the season, was that enough to prevent the Islanders from considering buying him out? Again, I think whether Lou stays or Lou goes will have a lot to do with it. If Lou Lamoriello is back, the odds of Pierre Engvall being back go up significantly. But we have to see what ends up happening in that regard. And then Anthony Duclair, who hasn't been around the team since Patrick Waugh called him out, and he said he was taking a leave of absence. He was not addressing the media either. Nobody seems sure whether or not he was even there to clean out his locker with his teammates or not. But no Anthony Duclair, no Pierre Engvall. And again, I think it just comes down to that this team needs a jolt. It needs revision. And, one other thing I want to kind of add to the mix. And everydayers, you've heard me mention it before. And I know a lot of fans have mentioned it before. This team has a leadership issue, I think. And I'm not necessarily pointing fingers at Anders Lee, the captain. And you would think a veteran team like the Islanders wouldn't have a big leadership issue. These are all guys who have been through the wars before. And yet, when you talk about a team that blows late leads, yeah, you get to speed and skill and all of that and age to a certain extent, but leadership is a part of it. And being able to hold on to a lead is part coaching, part experience, part skill. And this team consistently could not hold on to a lead. And I think you heard multiple players address that. And yet, I think it has to come down to leadership, whether it's coaching, whether it's the captain, whether it's the alternate captains, or just guys who have been veterans in this league and on this team who should, Matt Martin was not even on the ice sometimes, but you would think a veteran like Martin would be able to help this team hold on to leads. Just as a teammate who's sitting in the press box at practice or in between periods to speak to his teammates to help this team. You've got Bo Horvat and J.G. Pajot and Ryan Pollock and Adam Pelech, and so many of these guys are just Kyle Palmieri. They're old timers who have been through the war. You've got to be able to figure out how to hold a lead under those circumstances. And I think the lack of leadership is something that this organization also has to address, even if it's a little less tangible than team speed or having enough finishers. This team needs to adjust its leadership in order to get back into contention. And, it doesn't have to take 10 years, as Lou Lamoriello absurdly said at the trade deadline or just after the trade deadline. This team can retool in a couple of years and maybe even be competitive next year if they make the changes they need to make. But that's ultimately up to ownership, and hopefully Scott Malkin makes the right decision. Because one thing you have to know, if you read Islanders social media, if you look at the crowds that were there or were not there late in the season, fans are fed up. And some of them, long-term diehard fans that have reached out to me, are apathetic. And the one thing as a sports team you don't want is apathy. People can love your team, people can hate your team, but if they are indifferent, that's the kiss of death. All right, more to get to on today's show. We'll have our Islanders birthday of the day. A popular enforcer who was with the Islanders in the late 1990s and early 2000s. Plus, we'll talk about some injury updates and an early look at some of the off-season potential moves. All that and more coming up on the Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Amazon Fire TV. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K devices. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to play. Dive into thousands of premium titles from EA Sports College Football 25 to Call of Duty Black Ops 6 and Avowed. As easily as you stream your favorite TV shows, it's gaming made simple, and it's all on your Fire TV. With Wi-Fi 6/6E and auto low latency mode advanced technology, Fire TV Stick 4K delivers smoother and more responsive gameplay with lightning fast speeds that you need to stay competitive. And with 4K streaming, watch more than 1.5 million movies and TV episodes from your favorite subscribed services like Netflix, Prime Video, Disney Plus, Max, and more. So head to amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. So, no surprise, because we all know hockey players tend to play through a lot of injuries. But a lot of guys really did play through some pretty noticeable injuries. Semyon Varlamov, who had been out since right after American Thanksgiving in November, he revealed that he had a knee injury. He said it was something that had been bothering him for a long time. They decided in December he would undergo surgery. And basically what he said is, I've been doing the rehab and then everything I can to get back on the ice. But unfortunately, it's just taking longer this time. And this is how it goes. Sometimes it takes a month to recover. Sometimes it takes much longer. So this is my case. He hopes to be available to start training camp in September. So he's basically saying his career, he believes, is not over, and we'll see if he can be back. It would be huge for the Islanders to get a healthy Semyon Varlamov back, because obviously Ilya Sorokin played far too many games last season again, and it clearly wore him down. Matthew Barzal also addressed the media. He only played 30 games based on 2 different injuries, including a season-ending knee injury suffered on February 1st. He said it was very hard mentally for him to be away for so long, but he reiterated his belief in the boys, as he said, and he said everyone stepped up, everyone gave it everything they had every night. Ryan Polak played through an upper body injury in the second half of the season, or late in the season, that affected his play. Alexander Romanov, who also kind of struggled more late in the season, he said he broke the cartilage between his ribs and it affected his play at different times during the season, but he did not want to make any excuses. And Scott Mayfield expressed his frustration with what, his lack of being in the lineup down the stretch for many, many games. But he's confident in his future with the Islanders, and we'll see whether or not that confidence is justified. Now, Alexander Romanov did mention that he wanted to be an Islander as long as possible. He is a restricted free agent and needs another deal. But Noah Dobson, well, he tried to be a little bit more, how should we say, open-ended. He said, I think I'm open to anything. Obviously, it's got to work for both sides. With things changing around the league, mainly the rising salary cap, there's obviously lots of options. And I think now is the time where I'll sit down with my agents and we'll figure out what's best, and then talk to the team and Lou and what's best from there and try to come together. Alexander Romanov, Noah Dobson, in my mind, I don't want him to get anything more than a bridge deal, because his poor defensive play has really been a factor. I would rather sign him to a 2 or 3 year bridge deal at $5-6 million a year, or go with the 1 year arbitration deal with Noah Dobson before committing 8 years at $8.5-9 million a year to a guy who is just a big, big liability defensively. We have got a lot more to discuss, and we will be discussing it this week and all off season long. We still are here every day, Monday through Friday, talking Islanders hockey with you. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day. And Sunday was the 50th birthday of former Islanders forward Steve Webb, the Peterborough, Ontario native, a 7th-round pick of the Sabres in 1994, but made his NHL debut with the Islanders in 96-97, remained an Islander through the 02-03 season, played for Pittsburgh and the Islanders briefly in 03-04. So that was his story. He played in 321 career NHL games. Only 5 of them were with the Penguins, all the rest with the Islanders. 5 goals, 18 points, and 532 penalty minutes. Add 28 penalty minutes in 14 playoff games. One of Steve Webb's more memorable games as an Islander, October 10th, 2001. Islanders visiting the Penguins in this one. It's Chris Osgood, the goalie for the Islanders, J.S. Aubin, the goalie for the Penguins. And our Islanders' birthday of the day, Steve Webb, gets the scoring started midway through the first period of assists to Claude Lapointe and Matt Lindgren. That made it 1-0 Islanders. And obviously that was a big start to a 6-3 win for the New York Islanders in this game. In the game, Chris Osgood made 29 saves, but for Webb, he had a goal. He was a +2. He had a fight, so only a lack of an assist stood in the way of a Gordie Howe hat trick. And he had the goal and the fight and 2 shots on goal in just 4 minutes and 59 seconds of ice time. Steve Webb, a popular enforcer who never let his teammates down and a great member of the Islanders community, he is our Islanders' birthday of the day. I want to thank you for making Locked On Islanders your first listen today. For your second listen, check out the all-new Locked On NHL Game Night. Every game, every night until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Get local analysis on a national scale. Find NHL Game Night on Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. If you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, email us at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You could follow the show on X at Locked On Isles, and you could follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR_VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all off season long, and I am looking forward to seeing what moves this team makes. It's a critical offseason coming up. Have a great day, everybody. Stay safe. And of course, let's go Islanders.